Today we are in Revelation chapter 18, and this is going to be an interesting book. And once again, remember how I talk about how you have to look at things from certain perspectives, and it's important because if you look at things from a wrong perspective, you might see it incorrectly or come out with a misunderstanding. So it's key that we understand what we're looking at. Now, we're getting ready to come into a chapter where we're going to be introduced to a city. But a city is what? Now, for example, the church is also given another name to describe it. It's also called the bride of Christ. Okay. When we think of the bride of Christ, we recognize it as being those that believe and trusted Jesus for their salvation during this New Testament age. When we get further along into the book of Revelation, we're going to see that the bride of Christ is described not so much as individuals, but as a city where the individuals dwell. When you think about New York City, what makes New York City New York City?
All the people.
The people. And what the people have what? Have built. What they have put together. That's what makes. All right. And the people in New York City have a certain characteristic.
Yeah.
You have a certain flavor. If somebody was to say, name me some characteristics of people that live and work and hang out in New York City, you could probably name a few things. Mm-hmm. All right. But then if I say, if I go down and say, Atlanta, Georgia, or if I say, a city down in the South, you think of a different type of and the cities generally are characteristics of the people that what inhabited them. Mm-hmm. So it's important to keep that in mind because oftentimes people can get thrown off when the Bible describes cities as being having human characteristics, and we're going to see that today. The Bible's going to talk about this city called Babylon. All right, and it's important to recognize that what makes Babylon Babylon is the people that are part of it, and so it has a characteristic, it has a way. And previously, the last chapter, we were talking about the woman that rode the beast, and we were and even previously we were introduced to that woman as being the great whore, the whore, and she had her way of just accepting all kinds of things, anything that did not identify with Jesus. I accept anything, and so that spirit that's in that institution, that way of doing things, also has a place where it dwells. And so we're going to look at that, and we'll kind of bring that to light. But it's important to keep in mind that when the Bible describes these things, how it gives a description, it doesn't always just give it in ways that are just so crisp in human language, but it gives characteristics. It doesn't just say, well, it was, a certain way. It talks about it as being maybe like an animal or like a type of event. And that's because it's still a spiritual reality, not just a natural reality, which means it's greater than our natural reality. You can't totally comprehend it from a natural thing, what is spirit. The natural man cannot comprehend those things that are what? They're spiritual. So which is why when God gave the description of these kingdoms to Daniel, he described them as he described them as a statue of head, silver, brass, iron, and then clay. And then later on he describes them as animals. A leopard with wing, representing Alexander the Great, a bear. He describes them as various animals because those animals embodied the characteristic of that spirit that's behind that thing. And so that's important to keep in mind because when you see it that way, it doesn't lock you in to just trying to boil it down to just a natural thing. You have to allow it to be the spiritual multiplexical thing that it is. You can't just nail it down to just being just this. So when we get into this description of Babylon, it is a lot of stuff, but it's all the stuff that is not Jesus. And that's important to keep in mind. All right. And even with my explanation that I just gave, guess what? I'm still very small description. I'm not giving you the full aspect because it is so much to it. Because that's why the Bible says that we look through a glass, what? Dark. We only get this little bits and pieces. But there are going to be times when Jesus comes and he begins to sit down and he teaches and we're sitting there at his feet, and he's explaining all. The fullness of all this will be able to be totally understood by us. But we do get a glimpse of it today. All right. So let's take a listen to this chapter. Very important chapter, interesting as well. Chapter 18 of the book of Revelation.
Chapter 18. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. How much she hath glorified herself, and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth, who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls, and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thyine wood, and all manner vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and souls of men. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And the mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians, and of pipers and trumpeters, shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman, of whatsoever craft he be, shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth.
All right. So you see this city, which is embodied by the inhabitants of the city. The people that lived in this environment, in this spiritual city that was built up by their attitude towards God. Now, when you read commentaries, you're going to see a lot of people that take a various flavor. Some people say, well, this is a real literal city that is going to be built during the time of the tribulation. It's going to be the center of all commerce, all of the economic source of the earth during that time. And it very well could be. That I wouldn't deny that. That could definitely be. Others take it as the city is it represents the unseen commonwealth of all of the world's power and elite. And I think it definitely is that too. Well, it could be both. It could be either. But the point that we pull from this is that this is the way of the world. This is how the world, this is the city, this is the environment, this is the climate that the world without Jesus lives in. The powerful, those that are not looking for Jesus, and those that know about Jesus but don't want others to know about it. These are the individuals that are planning to fight and to hold on to what they have built and believe that what they've built is better than what God can give them. And they want to hang on and harness this and resist anything that God would do to make a change for the betterment of all people. But they want that control. They want that power. And so their whole industry is caught up in this description of this city, Babylon. So when we go through this, when we look and we see, first of all, it says, and after these things, in the first verse of this 18th chapter, it says, after these things. And remember, that means after what we saw. Remember, we saw the pouring out of the vials. We saw the description of the woman that rode the rides the beast, the great harlot. All right, and so now we're going even further and expanding more as to what depths this goes into. And so after these things, I saw another. So here comes another angel. Come down from heaven, having great power. So this was an angel that had great power. And so we can see that there were angels that have certain levels of authority. And this one had great power. And the earth was lightened with his glory. All right, so his the glory that and anything that we get, all of our recognition, anything, it all comes from who? It comes from God. God gives all of us our abilities. So this angel is reflective, like how Moses reflected the presence of God when he went up to the mountain, and God said, "I'll show you my afterglow." And then when Moses came down, his face still what? Still shined. And so this angel has glory, but this glory is not the glory because of the angel. This is the glory that the angel has by being in the what? Presence of God. And so his glory lighted the whole earth. And it says, and he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen. Now, it's called Babylon the Great because it was expansive. And this is why I think it has more to do with the whole global industry, the whole global commerce that these mighty individuals have networked together. See, you can take some of these real big corporations and businesses, and they oftentimes will have a global outreach. You take like, something as simple as McDonald's. You got McDonald's all over the planet. All right? They may have a headquarters, wherever it is, but they're outreach and they have, their European headquarters, although that's the European, but they may have a main headquarters somewhere else. But they got a headquarters maybe in China, and maybe another headquarters in Japan, and another headquarters in Australia. And so they have different places where they operate for that location. But they still have their number one headquarters, But they expand all over the what? All over the world. And so these, this Babylon, this Babylon the Great, it's called the Great because of its greatness, of its ability to reach across the globe. And who's involved with this? Well, we know it ain't the people of the Lord. This is where you get into that whole aspect. Some people talk about conspiracy theories, where people are there's this elite that runs things, and they talk about. And I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not there to see it. But I do know this. This stuff just doesn't happen by accident. There are people somewhere pulling cords and making things happen and allowing certain things to go on and other things not to go on, and putting people in power, taking people down out of power. It happens often, although I'm not qualified to speak about it in detail because I'm not there. But the one thing I do know is that God knows. God sees. And that's good enough for me. You see what I'm saying? I don't have to know. All I know is that God sees what Babylon the Great is doing. Just like God sees what Beacon is doing. God sees what New York State, the United Nations, and he sees what all these different entities are doing. God is very much always in control. He has never said, oh wow, I'm losing grip on it. God has never gotten confused as to what to do. He's never said, ooh, I didn't expect that. Right? So he's never been bamboozled or been tricked or been misled. God knows what's going on. And therein is our comfort. When we read stuff like this, we understand there is stuff going on. There are people that are coming together and they're doing things to benefit who? Themselves.
Absolutely.
And people that they want to help. But it may not be helping, altogether you or me or different ones that go out every day, work hard or have put your time in and they told you, well, when you work this many years, after you get a certain age, we're going to take care of you. And the way they told you what they were going to do and what they actually do, a lot of times don't equal what they say. But in the meantime, they kept taking your money, every paycheck, you see them right on in there, taking your money. Because they said, but when you get old, we got your back. We're going to take care of you. Well, you don't want to lean on that. We better lean on the Lord.
Amen.
All right? So, it's important to keep in mind, yes, this is Babylon the Great. All right? And it's big. It's bigger than we can think. Now, we're going to go through some of this stuff. And I want you to notice all of the places where Babylon the Great has its tentacles, where it's reaching into as we go through this. Look at all the places and all the things that it's involved in. It's important to keep that in mind. Sometimes you wonder, well, what is the devil in? You name it, he's got his hands in it. Remember, the devil was even amongst those that followed Jesus. He was in with the 12. He got his hand in a lot of stuff that sometimes we would not even recognize. But he's there. But nevertheless, Jesus was not fooled. Jesus said, haven't I not chosen you? And one of you is a devil. He knew. God don't lose track. All right. So Revelation 18, we're now in verse 2. And it says, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen. All right, that when it says it's fallen, that means it's what? It's going down.
Yeah.
Is fallen. It says it twice. And is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Okay, what makes up Babylon the Great? We were given a description of its inhabitants. Remember when I told you when we first started? If I was to ask you, give me some descriptions of how people that live in the city of New York, how they're fast-paced, kind of they kind of like dress trendy and stylish, right? Have certain. Okay, here's some of the descriptions of the kind of people that dwell in this inhabitant place called Babylon the Great. It says its inhabitants, it's become the habitation of who? Devils.
Devil.
Number one. All right. And the hold of every what? Foul spirit. Okay. Sound a little bit worse than New York City, don't it? And the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Okay, so these are the people that are running Babylon the Great, that are brought in, that are part of it. All right, but let's keep going. For all nations, wait a minute, all nations? Maybe he meant some nations. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So what is it saying? It says that all nations are part of it. Which is why I lend to the thinking that Babylon the Great is not just one city, but it's a conglomerate. It's a network of interactions. All right? For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Now, keep this in mind. When it says they drunk of the wine, wine is something that is sometimes appetizing, so that you look forward to, that can make you happy. The wine of her wrath. So that means that if you were a nation and didn't want to be part of it, you would get her what? Her wrath. So Babylon, the network of how Babylon works on earth is it forces you. If you want to be a nation of any consequence, you're going to be part of what? Of what we do. And if you're not, we will take the leader out and put it in a what? A new leader. Boy, that happens a lot, don't it?
Oh, yeah. Amen.
Interesting, right? Drunk of the wine of her fornication. So then you also have to come in and you have to come into her in a way that has already been outlined as being illegal to God. When it's described the fornication, that means you have to worship God in a way that is not proper. You have to see God in a way that is not proper. That's the whole aspect of that whore, that harlot. You cannot acknowledge Jesus as being the Son of God. That would be a proper relationship. That would be proper indwelling. But if you relate to God in any other way, besides coming in the way that God told you to come in, which is through Jesus, then you're doing it outside the boundaries. You can't come to God any other way. And it's described as fornication because that's the way it's supposed to be with a husband. The intimate relationship between a man and a woman is supposed to happen on the lines of what? Matrimony. You can do it all kinds of other ways. It's not that you can't do it. But if you don't come that way, you're outside the way in which God what? Described it. It's the same thing here. You can try to get to God any kind of way you want to. That don't make it the way that God said you have to come. There's only one way to come to God, and that's Jesus. If you come out any other way, you are a thief and a robber. All right? And it's also described as being one that has fornicated itself because you're trying to get to God in a way that is not what? That has been outlined as the way that you're supposed to come. So, when you see this verbiage, the way that the Bible describes it, the Holy Spirit is using this specifically to show. All right? So it says that they drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So, here we go in a situation where the enticement is your own personal well-being. You come to me and I will give you all of this. You come to me and look at what you get. And they shine, they showcase all of the allure that you can receive. The devil did that to Jesus. All right, when during the tribulation, during the temptation, when he said he took it and showed them all of the kingdoms of the earth in a moment of time, and said, "All this and its glory will I give unto you, if you would do what? Bow down and worship me." And Jesus said, "It is written, you shall worship the Lord thy God, and him only." That's the only way. Him only shalt thou serve. Right? It's the only way you get. Any other kind of way, you're coming in as a thief and a robber. And you're committing spiritual fornication if you come any other kind of way. So it says that these kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich. A lot of rich people on this earth, isn't it? How do they get all this rich? A whole lot of manipulation, isn't it? And that's what that is. So you have to agree that we are going to set up a way that will convince people to allow us to steal from them, to take from them. Remember when Jesus came and began his ministry? One of the first things he did was he went into the temple and he did what? He overthrew those tables, because he said, "You are becoming what? Thieves and robbers. This should be called the house of prayer, but you've made it a den of what? Thieves." And so we are being manipulated, and we are being stolen from all the time, because that's what the devil does, and our society backs it up. There's not a whole lot we can do about it. And they even tried to get Jesus. They came to Jesus with a question, because they said, the Roman government is sucking us dry with these taxes, right? And so they said, well, we're going to get Jesus. We're going to put him between a rock and a hard place. Should we pay the taxes or not? And they came up with that question because they feel that, well, it's an either or. We got them trapped. And people do that today. You ever hear some people say, well, can God do anything? And of course, yes, he can. Well, can he make a rock that's so heavy that he can't lift it? And they think that's a question that can trap God, because they say if he can't make a rock heavy enough that he can't lift, then he can't do everything. And if he can't lift the rock, then he can't do everything. And they think that question is just so intelligently. And for me, I don't have the answer for it. But I guarantee you, ask that question to Jesus and watch him go, bam. Now, I'm not Jesus. I can't give you what the Spirit can do. The same thing they did with that tax thing. They figured it was clear cut. If you say pay the taxes, the people are going to revolt. If you say don't pay the taxes, we're going to call the Roman guards and we're going to have them arrested for sedition. And he said, why do you tempt me? Because he knew with their spirit. And he said, show me a coin. Whose image and superscriptions on here? They said Caesar. He said, now you give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but give to God what belongs to God. So when you think about how we work hard and all this, and we say we work and we earn our hard-earned money, remember this: you work more than just for dollars and cents. You also work for God. God pays you. So let Caesar take his stuff out. So therefore, you look at it. No, when I look at my check and I see how much taxes and Social Security and all that stuff they take out, it don't make me smile. But I tell you what I do. I recognize that in my paycheck there is that unseen payment from God. So and that helps you to just say, you know what? God's going to see me through this. And I had to learn that. I had to learn that, because this world could get you frustrated with how it takes from you. And I had to realize that I have a payment that this world can't take. So when I go in, I do my job, I do what I got, and they look, and I know that, I work hard enough. I should be paid more money. I should, you think like that. And everybody can have that feeling. And if you go and you work hard, you expect. But then you also got to recognize my payment is not only coming from this world. Because this world gives so it can take.
That's right.
That's why it doesn't. So therefore, you got to recognize that along with what this world may give you, which it can take back in a moment's notice, you are being also rewarded by God. So you go on, do your job, do what you got to do, and watch God bless you. He'll see you through it. And sometimes it takes that renewing of the mind. That's why that scripture in Romans is so important. Don't be conformed to this world, but be you what? Transformed by the renewing of your mind. You got to think differently. Don't let this world tell you how to think or how to see. So yes, you can be, disappointed, and when they give you the raise, take the raise. Don't get crazy. Well, you know what? I get paid by Jesus. I don't need the raise. No, take the raise, but at the same time, when they take more taxes or they take this, just be okay. Just God's going to work it out. And if God says, I need you to go to another job because they're going way off board, He'll open that door.
Amen.
And this is something that sometimes is not easily understood because we see so many things purely from the natural. So when we look at our paycheck, we're only looking at the natural dollars. And we're not told that we can see spiritual aspects to that. God's got your back. But it's something that you have to learn to just make it part of who you are as a servant of God. Otherwise, you can get depressed and bewildered. But let's keep going here. There's a lot that we have to cover. All right, verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. So what does that say? Come out of that city. Who? My people. That means don't live the way they want you to live. Don't think the way they want you to think. Don't act the way they want you to act. That you be not partaker of her sin. Don't be the way she is. All right, that's how this world is. This system, the way our politics and our pop culture and our political thinking and all that. It's all part of that same sinful Babylon, the great way. And that ye receive not of her plagues, because they're going to get paid. Because they're going to get paid. See, the other thing you got to keep in mind when you look at your paycheck and you see, maybe low wages and high taxes. But remember, you see God. Look at God. But the one that's not trusting in God, what they don't see is on their paycheck, the wages of sin is what?
Death.
They got plagues written in their paycheck. And that's something you don't want on your check. You don't want that. So, telling us to come out from their ways so that we won't receive the plagues that are coming upon them. All right, verse 5. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. All right. So a lot of times when they take all our taxes out and everything, we wait for what? Our income tax refund, right? We get some of it back. Well, this is going to be their spiritual refund. They're going to get a lot back, but it ain't something they want. It's not something they want. God's going to reward. They're going to remember their iniquities. 6. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. You're going to get paid for what you did, but you're going to get double. You're going to get double time. Time and a half. All that. And that's you don't want extra pay for that. But Babylon's going to get extra pay, and her inhabitants are going to get that. And the cup which she hath filled to her double. All right? You see that? Once again, letting you know, you're going to get paid, but you're going to get paid more than what you expected. And you're not going to want these wages. Verse 7. How much she hath glorified herself. That's one thing that she does. She always glorifies herself. It's all about her. And what does that mean? Those inhabitants. And who are those inhabitants? Let's go back up to the second verse. Every devil, every foul spirit, every unclean and hateful bird. All right? And the people that follow that kind of stuff. Those are the people. Those are the individuals. All right? 7. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. Look at how she lived on this earth. How does she live? Deliciously. That means wonderful. Remember the story that Jesus gave about the rich man and the poor man, and how he lived sumptuously. I can't say that word, but he lived wonderfully every day. He just lived on the high hog, right? But then Lazarus was just asking for the crumbs that fell from the master's table. All right, but that's okay. God knows and sees. He hasn't forsaken you. He's with you. We got to remember, God will be paying the final paycheck. Right? How much she has glorified herself and has lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow given her. Why? Because of all that she lived. And how does she live deliciously? By putting everybody else in servitude. There's a lot I can say about that. Let's move along. We'll talk about that in a minute. For she hath in her heart, she saith in her heart, I sit a queen. In other words, I'm better than you. I sit higher than you. Me and you, there's no equality here. You serve me and take care of me. And if I need something, I will take it from you. Right? That's what Jezebel did. Remember with Naboth's vineyard, and when King Ahab wanted Naboth's vineyard, and Naboth wouldn't sell it to him, and Jezebel said, "Well, aren't you the king or not? I'll get you the vineyard." And she went and spread lies on Naboth, and had Naboth put to death on some accusations that were all lies. And then when he died, she told Ahab, "Now you go take his field." But that's the spirit of the inhabitants of Babylon. If you have something that I want, I will take it. And either you join with me and become part of who I am, and when you say, no, I don't want to be part of what you're doing, well, I'll just take it from you then. But remember, God sees all. God sees all. And so they shall be rewarded. Therefore shall her plagues, verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, mourning, and famine. And she shall be utterly burnt with fire. Look at the paycheck they're getting. For strong is the Lord God who judges her. Verse 9. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously. How do these kings live? Delicious. They live wonderfully. They live deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament. That means they're going to be mournful because their way of manipulation has been broken, has fallen down. They shall bewail her and lament her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. They're going to see her what? Being destroyed, burnt up. Verse 10. Standing afar off. See, they're standing where? Afar off. I see you falling down, but I'm not going to get close enough to get burned. But I am sad to see you go down. Because see, the thing about the inhabitants of this city, they're all about themselves. Because why? Because what makes up their character? They're devils, foul spirit, unclean, and hateful. That's what it says, the inhabitants. That's what it says in the second verse. Standing afar off, for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants, who's the merchants? This is the corporations, the big businesses, the IBMs, the AT&Ts, the Texacos.
Easy now. Easy by IBM.
Hey, Exxon. All the big companies, Microsoft, all these big companies, Ford. I'm picking on people, but that's all right. They're all part of it. And the merchants of the earth. I really should be. The one thing I should name should be like Smith Barney and the stock market and Wall Street. Although they all are part of it, but there's definitely some ringleaders. Because when they talk about the housing market and all this, they just stole all this money from people, and then they're going to tell, we're going to take all your money. Well, wait a minute. See, this is what gets me. Lord help me. Help me, Lord.
Help him, Lord. Help him.
They told us that we were running short on Social Security. They've been saying that. They've been singing that song for what? A long time. Y'all been paying into it. But we want now, so we can't really give y'all money. You know, I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to give you the money. Okay. Now the minute that AIG and Smith Barney and all them big corporations, financial corporations, begin to stumble and fall, what happened? All of a sudden, they come up with trillions of dollars to bail them out. Wait a minute, time out. I thought you said you didn't have money for the Social Security to pay the people that worked hard. And you were talking about how y'all were going to, you know, you're going to have to cut back and you might not get everything we promised you and all that. We're going to run short. But then with the minute, you know, all them financial people and industries and corporations and merchants fall, you got trillions. Trillions with a T and an S at the end for being plural. More than 1 trillion. Trillions of dollars to give to these people to bail them out. So that, I mean, I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, but that means you had the money somewhere. You took it from, but that's the money you've been taking from where? From us. I mean, now, hey, I'm not a politician and I'm not no financial tycoon and whiz and whatever, but I know what 2 plus 2 is.
Amen.
And you don't have to be,
Rockets.
all right, but you see what I'm saying? So, I mean, come on.
It still ain't changed Wall Street. They want right back to
Right back to the same way. You're absolutely right.
Right back to the
The
same.
devil gonna change.
You wash that pig up and pull him out, and what do you do? The minute you let him go, he go right back into the mud.
That's his nature.
There they go.
You put lipstick on it, make it look as pretty as you want to,
Back to the mud.
but they go right back in there.
That's it.
All right. Anyway, all right, that's a side note. Let's get back to it. And the merchants, that's the companies, the corporations, the businesses of the earth, shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. All of a sudden, stuff just comes to a halt. Verse 12. And the merchandise of gold, look at what they do now, what they deal in. Gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen, all those wonderful clothes, all those Nike shoes and all that stuff. And purple and silk and scarlet and fine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of precious wood and brass and iron and marble. Woo! Right? And cinnamon. Oh, we're going to mess with those big fancy restaurants too now. Stuff you use. Cinnamon and ointment and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots. Chariots? Yeah, that Mercedes Benz you got, BMW, chariots, and slaves and souls of men. Slaves, yeah, all them workers you got. All them people that's making all them shoes for $6 and you sell them for $200. Souls of men, people that you corrupt and you manipulate. Because see, there's certain people that are not rich, but they well off, and you buy them off. I'm gonna make you okay, and they control it. But you got to agree and do what I do. You got to help promote what we're doing here. Sell their soul. How they do it? By saying, I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to, what? Agree with it. And that's part of what these merchants do. You see that list? It's amazing. Remember I said, look at the tentacles. Look at all the stuff that Babylon has its hand in. Let's keep going though. 14. And the fruit that thy soul lust after are departed departed from thee, and all things which are dainty and goodly are departed from thee. All those things that are dainty and good. Who has all those things? The rich and the powerful, the controllers. The people that make the decisions of this world. The people that make up Babylon the Great. All this is departed from thee, and thou hast found them no more at all. Now all of a sudden, it doesn't work anymore. Our system has been broken. Let's keep going. Verse 15. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her. How are they made rich? By who? By her. All right. And the her is who? That whore that makes up the nature of Babylon. Made rich by her. All right. The good and let's go back. And thou have found them. Let me go back up to 14 because I lost my spot. The fruit that thy soul lust after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. And the merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand where? Afar off. For what? For fear from her torment, weeping and wailing. All right. So these merchants now are standing afar off. They're sad. Why are they sad? Because we lost our control. We can't have the people enslaved, and we can't buy their souls anymore. And see, if you think people can't buy people today, you see some people they ask those silly questions. You know, would you give up your husband or your wife? No, they would say, how much would you have to receive to give up your husband or your wife? And there's people that will name a number. You know, well, my wife is good. You got to give me like $20 million. Well, then then you ain't good. All right, my husband is the greatest. I need like 100 million. Well, that's a lot of money, but you still ain't good. Because see, if you get to that point, then you can be bought. You have to say, I cannot be bought. There's not a price. But you're going to be so well off. You won't have to worry about anything. Yes, you will. You're going to worry about this. You take that money, and then you go read chapter 18 of the book of Revelation. That's what you're going to have to worry about. Try to live peaceably, knowing this is about to happen to you. You better take the peace that God gives us. God gives us the peace that passes what? All understanding. Don't worry about it. Worrying about how you're going to pay your bills and how you're going to... That's something, don't worry about that being a worry. Because that's very small in compared to this. We all struggle with different things and how we're going to do and health-wise and all that. Don't worry about that kind of stuff. Jesus told us not to worry about that. He said, take care of what you got to take care of today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. What is that saying? Trust me for tomorrow. I got you for tomorrow. You just handle what you got to handle today. And when tomorrow comes, we'll deal with that then. That's not how this world tells us to do. This world tells us from the day you get your job, when you're like 18, 19, 20 years old, start worrying about when you're 65. That's how this world has trained us. Instead of telling us, trust God for each day. No. And Jesus picked that up. Remember, Jesus said that man, that it was foolish. He said, I've made so much, and I'm going to build bigger barns. And Jesus called him a fool. Right? There's two kinds of fools in the Bible. One that says, I don't believe there is a God, and another one that says, I'm going to set up my money for the future. God said the person that does that is a what? Is a fool. Now, I didn't make this up, but it does wake you up. Because I've always thought of that that makes sense, because they train us. Because that's the way this world is what? It has indoctrinated us. That's why, once again, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed. You got to renew your mind, and you got to renew your thinking. All right? God will take care of you. And I think about, well, then when you go back and look at, well, how did God take care of people that were senior citizens in the older days? And you look at how God gave them strength, and He made ways. And There were certain ones where God says, I'm going to take you here, like with Moses. He says, I'm going to take you and let you go, and I'm going to allow myself to bury you. But that's not the end of you, because then we see Moses popping up at the Mount of what? Transfiguration. And therein is the secret. If you're only trying to live for now, for this earthly realm, you will never understand what God has in plans, has in store for you. You got to see yourself as the eternal being. You have to see yourself as eternal, not just now. Right? Because God's got the greatest security for you. He's got the greatest. Right? And sometimes that's difficult to do in a way when we've been trained by how you can see all the merchants and the kings of the earth have trained us. All right? But that's why Jesus came. He said, I came to give light. I'm the light of the world. He says, I've come to give truth. All right? I am the way and the truth. All right, where did we leave off? Was it 16? Mm-hmm. All right, so they're weeping and wailing, and in 16 they go, and saying, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple. Now look at the stuff that they all excited about. There's nothing in here about, oh, this place was righteous, these were good, these were humble. None of these attributes. Look at what's important to them. And we look at why they cried, because they're missing out on this. They're missing out on, what are they missing out on? That was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. Look at the stuff that's important. They're wailing and crying and weeping over this kind of stuff. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the companies in ships and the sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off. All these people, all the middlemen. I didn't make it, and I'm not buying it, but I'm shipping it. I'm bringing it. So all of this corporate society, this whole Babylon the Great, that's why it's called Babylon the Great, because its tentacles are in all kinds of stuff. It's in everything. And they are just upset that all their riches and their control and their mastery is broken and fallen down. The companies and the ships and sailors and as many as trade by the sea stood afar off. 18. And crying when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing and saying, alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by the reason of her costliness. They were made rich by who? By Babylon. The way that they did things. That whole system. For in 1 hour she is made what? Desolate. That means you're going broke. You know, the reason why, we talked about this just a minute ago, when the stock market crashed, in just a moment, all of a sudden, a lot of people lost what? Some money. And the minute they lost that money, all of a sudden, the companies went to the political people and said, we want our money back. We lost it. We squandered it. We made investments, and it's gone, and we want our money back. And guess what the political people did? Gave it to them. Now, that was a simple way of saying it. Right. There was a whole lot of conversation because they had to go through all this media stuff to convince us that this was the right thing to do. And no matter how many times we looked at it, I'm looking like, where did you get that money from? Well, where was it? How are you going to give somebody $2 and $3 trillion? Well, where did you have it? You took it from us. But then you told us that we didn't have enough money to, if you needed medication, we ain't got no money for your medication. We ain't got no money for your Medicaid. We ain't got no money for this. Wait a minute. But see, that's the devil. And that's why we got to look past that God's got your care. What kind of Medicare you need? You need God care.
Amen.
What kind of paycheck you need? You need God's paycheck. Now, keeping this in mind, when you get your paycheck, you still take it to the bank. When you got to go to get your Medicare and your doctor's appointments, you still give them your card. But you make sure you understand that this ain't just a card. I'm also giving you in the name of the Lord. See, that's the spiritual aspect. I'm not walking in this, even though I have to live in it. I'm walking in the name of the Lord. And that's the renewing of the mind that we have to do. And it transforms you. It does. It makes your day. Let me tell you. Because you can be able to deal with all this corruption that we see going on. Because otherwise, you'll find yourself getting depressed. And beginning to wonder, what are we going to do? Don't worry. God's got this. God has not lost control. He knows what's going on. And he sees what's happening. All right, let's finish this up. Verse 20. Rejoice over her, thou heavens, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. So those that are, and here's the description, holy. That means set aside for God. Holy apostles, those that follow God, and prophets, those that speak the things that God speaks. You guys have been avenged. We have been avenged. 21. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. At all. It's going to be thrown down and it's going to be gone. You can't use that system anymore. It's gone. All right. It's like when a house catch on fire or a house blow up. Guess what? You can't use that house no more. It's done. It's finished. You can't go back in there. 22. And the voice of harpers and musicians, listen to this now, and the pipers and the trumpeters shall be heard, what? No more at all in thee. You mean all that good music, all that good rapping, all that good hip hop, and all of them jingle bells and all that stuff? None of that's going to be heard what? No more in him. All right. So once again, another industry, another area where the tentacles are, and shall be heard no more in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee. What kind of craftsman? You name it. He ain't there. Any kind of craftsman you can think of, he's no longer there. Which means that those craftsmen used to be what? There. This music was there, but it's not there anymore. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. All right, that means people working day to day, working at the millstone, grinding meal. Not going to hear that anymore. And the light of a candle shining shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the who? Earth. The great men of the earth. So who were these people? Who were your merchants? The people that dwelt, that bought your goods, were the great men of the earth. So the Bible is identifying these individuals. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. Sorceries meaning they were working things of devilish witchcraft, manipulation. I have control over the way you think. How do they produce control over the way you think? by how they produce pop culture. Correct, so-called correct thinking. That you're supposed to think a certain way. That's how they produce this. They do this mind control manipulation on this is the way you should think. All right, and we have to kind of ask God to open that veil up. And somebody said, "Well, tell me what that is." And I said, "Well, you know what? I can't go that it's certain things you just need God to open up your eyes to see." All right, it's like you could look at the Bible tells us there is corruption in in false worship and in false prophets and in people that, and you say, well, you can sit there and try to name all that, and I used to try to do that. I must admit, I used to try to name all these people, but I said, you know what? You ask God to show you. You ask God to open up your understanding, and I guarantee you, He will do it. Let us conclude here. We're just about done. All right. So all these nations that they were deceived by the sorceries. That means the manipulating of your mind. All right, and we got to make sure that we don't allow that to happen. Final verse. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. So not only were they greedy for all this merchandise and for all this stuff that they wanted to have, this gold and silver and precious stone and pearl and fine linen and silk and scarlet and wood and ivory and iron and marble and cinnamon and frankincense and on and on and on, they also did what? They murdered the prophets and killed the saints. Right. Because why? Because the prophets were the ones telling them what you're doing is not right. John the Baptist was like that. What you're doing, talk to the king, is not right. And then what happened to John the Baptist? He ended up getting his head chopped off. He got arrested and then ended up being put to death. Jesus told him, what you're doing is not what? It's not right. And but Jesus came to do that. He knew he was going to die. And Jesus said, if they kill me, guess what they'll do to you? So therefore, we got to be okay. But now, that'll make sometimes you can become fearful unless you see yourself as an eternal being. If you see yourself only as a natural being, then you're going to do all you can to preserve the natural man. But once you start seeing yourself, and that's why you got to renew your mind, see yourself as an eternal being that lives in this natural world. You still do all you can to protect the body. You don't go out there I'm just going to walk in the middle of traffic because I'm an eternal being. No, that ain't what I'm talking about. You do all the proper things that you need to do. But at the same time, don't let the devil threaten you with the end of natural life. You stand regardless because you know that you are an eternal being. Right? And that's important to do. All right. Any other comments or questions on this? This was interesting, wasn't it? You sit there and look at all that and you go, wow.